Hey y'all, hey everybody, happy December, and welcome to the Bill 206 Labor Standards in Education OLS podcast. Okay, this is, of course, you know us, Brothers United in Leadership Development, working on the empowerment of the Black community. Uh, Prioritizing the voices of Black men, but also lifting up everything Black, right? From our mothers, celebrating our mothers, to our fathers, to our Black Incubator program. What we are trying to do at with Bill 206 is to make sure that we're creating a space for empowerment, a space for growth, and above all else, a space for healing. And a part of that is learning your rights and your labor standards, right? So that's exactly why we came up with our OLS, Labor Standards in Education podcast, right? And just to be familiar about your rights and responsibilities. Now, Build is focusing on labor standards to help educate and inform our community about their rights, responsibilities related to labor standards, not just as employees, but employers of the city of Seattle. Okay. Now, you already heard our last two podcasts, and they were both fire. We were able to interview Reek from Ascended Reality. We had my other girl, who's an amazing poet, Laura. And then now I get to bring on a girl who is a woman, who is my sister, who is an artist, and who is just, I would just say she's a barrier breaker. That's how I like to introduce her. But without further ado, Miss Ariyah Jané.
Hi, sugars. I just love coming up to do anything with Bill 206. I swear y'all changed the game every single time I work with you, and it is such an honor to be in space. Hi, brother. How are you, Deaunte?
You know, girl, I'm doing so good. I'm doing so great because I think that, when we're talking about labor standards and we're talking about supporting artists, right? Most of the time people are always asking you to come perform, but don't know what it takes to be an artist out here in this community. So when we're talking about fair pay and fair work in the areas of arts, what does that mean to you?
Wow. Okay, so I think it's important to note that being artists, especially at the independent level, because we're talking about our local artist scene, which is spectacular here in Seattle. These folks, our entire workforce is in our art, in our creativity. But it's not just in what we do. While we are singers, we are songwriters, we have bands and musicians and rehearsal spaces and venues, and we have to go and pay the fees and learn the lessons and do the education. And so when you think of other trades per se, right? It's understandable for trade programs where people can go sit in a classroom and leave with a certification, that this thing now has a piece of paper that decides now I can pay you because of this. It is different for people in spaces of artistry because you really can't take an artist and put a piece of paper behind them and just say that's it. There are so many incredible artists that maybe don't have access or privilege to go to a four-year institution, or maybe don't have
Yeah.
access to a classroom, right? But they did have access to live skills and learning by ear and taking their instrument and their gift and putting in stages and putting in projects and putting it in front of us. And we get to heal from it. It's medicine, it's laughter, it's joy, it's entertainment, it's
It's
art,
all
but
of
it's
that.
also our work. Yeah.
It is all of that, and when we're thinking about like labor laws and standards and minimum wage, right? And sick pay, how has that ever affected you like even in your creative way?
You know what? There have been times it has. You're told early on if you want to perform. I'm a theater baby, right? My first director, when I started my journey in wanting professional gigs, said if you ever find a gig that will pay you to do the exact same script every day, go do it, right? Because the thought of not having a place to go and do the art hurts enough, but the thought of not being able to eat the next month also hurts as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and so
right.
for a lot of artists, there is no sick pay. If I miss my gig, if I miss my show, there's a chance I might miss my lights. I'm blessed because I get to work in nonprofits, but I think that that's our responsibility for those of us that do have access, and voice in different sectors, and we get to sit at tables. It's for us to advocate for the folks that don't have an insurance policy. An insurance policy doesn't come with a residency. An insurance policy might not come with a weekly gig that we get to do. Most
Right.
of this is curating and coming out of these same folks' pockets. So
Right.
how can we as a community pour back into the art that every week pours into us and create space for us to come and do social wellness and do emotional healing and for healers to come together and share their gifts? How do we give back?
See, and that's really, I love how you said that. How do we give back? I think that's really like the message of OLS and their labor standards, to kind of educate folks on how we can try to figure out how to navigate that kind of space. And that kind of leads into my next question, right? What makes it hard for artists or small creative businesses such as yourself understand or follow these kinds of like labor rules, like sick time, paid sick time off, or sick and safe leave?
Um, I think one of the barriers is we have to acknowledge the fact that that is still privileged, right? Because there are people that work part-time jobs and they don't get the same access to these times already. So for those of us in creative spaces, we have to actually advocate for ourselves for what that will look like. Sick time for an artist that might be working with you, it might show up in how you do their contracting, right? It might show up to say that instead of us penalizing you if you get sick before a show, we understand that. And we also understand, right? So
Hmm.
I think there's ways that we can do that as a community. But for those of us that are artists, that are creatives in this work, that are creating and curating spaces for other artists to come to, it's important that we understand that that at the very beginning of our foundation, of our curation, of us putting a show together, of us putting a team together, the lived experience of that team has to be centered. And it's easier,
Okay.
it's easier said than done, of course, right? Because if you're of the same lived experience, it's hard for me to make room for a gas stipend when I'm struggling to put gas in my car, right?
And I got to go
But
perform all the way in Bremerton, right?
exactly. And I
And
still got
clear
to
my,
get the band there too, though.
yeah.
Right? I still got to make sure we all, if I can't afford for somewhere to stay, we all got to at least eat while we're here, you know? And there are times we might not leave the gig the same day with money. How are we accountable for our folks that are with us? And how do we hold the spaces that are bringing us and our folks accountable to how to care for us?
And that's real, I think that, speaking of care for us, with Build and OLS, within this partnership, we also want to know, what do you think the city groups like our organizations could do to better support artists and creative workers around fair pay and rights?
Wow. Okay, so this is actually such a beautiful start because honestly, I've been singing professionally since I was 13 years old. And I think this is the first time that I've thought about um what it would be like to be a professional performing artist with the same rights and protections that I have in my 9 to 5 position, with the same rights and protections that I have in these bars. What is our stance as a community when an artist comes out and says, I'm not being paid for my work? How do we show up and hold those bars and those spaces and those venues and those curators and promoters accountable to the care? But also, right, how do we continue to do what OLS is doing right now? Bring the education and tools to the artists so we can know what to say. How can
Hmm.
we learn the language, teach the narrative so we can go tell the story? Because a lot of times, some of us walk into spaces without the right verbiage, so we don't get the right care because we didn't know what to say. Just like we've seen with marginalized beings in healthcare systems, it shows up in our workforce. So if we start to give this verbiage and give this language to our community, a language that says, this is what I deserve, this is my right, based off of what you said and what this says. If we can continue to empower our folks with that, I think we're going to see a mandated shift from the community of creatives to the community of curators.
Ooh, that was a word. So I'm a one up you, right? Because we act just kind of like locally in the areas of Seattle. But like when we look ahead, right? How could labor laws work better for people in art and culture around the world?
Don't forget that this is still work. Don't forget that your singer, your local jazz musician, they're still your doctors, baby. There's a historical element when you talk about eras like the Harlem Renaissance, where
Oh,
creativity birthed what we have as new age movements of how we do art today. We can have more of that when we start to create more space for more people like that to survive. I think that the call to action, as we like to call it, to our community, and I do mean at a global level, is to remember that these artists, music, painting, poetry, storytelling, narratives, authors, dancers, uh, sculptors,
Hmm.
all of these artists leave monuments that live beyond them, that you can pass on to your children as if they belong to you, that tell your stories in ways that maybe you never had a chance to. And so we have to give honor in those areas. We have to give flowers in those areas, and we've got to preserve those areas. Our singers, our songwriters, our living museums, right? Living archivists. How can we start to remember the medicine that comes from the music, the medicine that comes from the art? Because if we remember it as medicine, if you notice, we're going to keep that medicine system going for us. We got to remember that it's a part of our medicine system. It's been passed down from us as Black folks between generations. Uh, and it's been healing the globe for generations. It
Yeah.
is time for it to be invested back into.
Yeah. And sorry, that sat with me because, you know, I mean, for people that don't know, you're my sister, and you already know I've been navigating even I'm not an artist, but having to navigate through these spaces, being able to hold space for that is something that I need to remember and slow down and remember that, right? And when I think about like in a lot of the work of the artists and the work of independent contractors in our community that are doing the areas of arts, how does that impact your sense of stability and protection as a worker in the Seattle art scene?
You know, I think since we're talking about locally here in Seattle, while I know we are still building and we're still learning, Seattle does a beautiful job at finding ways to curate space. I think that the next task is to remember that once we get folks in the room, just like with any other programming that we have that we create, we got to think about how we can get them there and also keep them okay while they're there. Um, we got to get them there and keep them okay while they're there, and that's really what the call is from a lot of creatives in this city, is to be in spaces where we'll be safe while we're there, right? And safety is not just in the security around the building. Safety is in knowing that the guarantee, I'm not settling for something that's only going to get me through the evening, right?
Hmm.
Because we can invest back into what invests into us. Settling also sometimes um, into the fact that art in itself it belongs to the creatives and the community together as one. We are connected through this. It connects us. It brings us together. And when we prioritize unity, when we prioritize togetherness, we'll start to see even our community move in organizing and in advocacy in a different way. Because we see music used as tools even in those areas across history. And I'm using music as a as
I
a
no 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 I
as a
no I
pinpoint because that's my field.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I had to have you come on, Araya. You know, I just appreciate you for coming on. You already know how much Bill 206 not only just loves you, but we love your art. We love all you are art. And I think that every time when you've ever been at our events or even just opened your mouth and just hell, even volunteered or participated, you're just a person that always feels like home. Which is just like our organization, which is just like
My brothers, they're my
right,
brothers over there, Bill
right,
206.
right. And we wanted to know, Araya, before we let you go, where can community find you?
Oh wow. You can find me on Instagram at officially Ariyah Jané. And my music is on all major streaming platforms. I do have an EP out. It is called Dear Ariyah. I hope you all check it out. Listen to the music. We do have more music coming too, friend. We
Okay.
have music coming.
You know,
Um,
I need to. I can't wait for you to hear people to hear the unreleased song. That's my favorite song. But we ain't even gonna say
you
the
talking about
song.
the one you wrote
No,
since you want you didn't since you
uh,
took the one you wrote, right?
no, no, we are not gonna talk about that. We gonna
Okay,
that's
okay,
coming
okay,
soon.
okay, okay,
They
okay.
don't even know I be doing the things, but I'm on my way. But
Come on, friend.
but I want to thank you so much, and I want to thank you, community, Now, to learn more about Office of Labor Standards and more from Bill 206, I need you to go to bill206.com/labor standards. That's bill206.com/labor standards. Thank you, Ariyah. Thank you, artist. Thank you, OLS. Thank you, community, and have a great night.
Good night, y'all.
FIFA World Cup is coming to Seattle in 2026, and Bill 206, in partnership with the Seattle Office of Labor Standards, wants to make sure that employees and artists alike are prepared for the changes that may impact them with this big event coming to our town. Seattle is one of 16 host cities for the FIFA World Cup. Events will be held throughout the city between June 11th and July 19th. All matches will be held at Lumen Field. Events of this magnitude normally bring new events, new business, tourists, and more to the city. They also allow for the ease of labor violations due to the quick turnaround and staffing needs of all of the activities. So which categories of work might be impacted? Well, large national level events like this bring a lot of new and exciting income opportunities to the city. The most likely impacted areas of work will be those who work in rideshare, gig workplaces, hotel employees, food service staff, and event staff. So what can you do to protect yourself? If you work in any of those categories, we recommend that you visit the Office of Labor Standards website to stay informed about your rights. Check out seattle.gov/labor standards to learn more before FIFA 26 arrives. And as always, be sure to check out Build's website at bill206.com/labor standards for more information as we continue to educate our community members on their rights as employees and employers in the city of Seattle.